Hi, this is Scott with eTrailer. Today we're going to be taking a look at and installing the Demco Air Force One on our 2025 Ford Ranger. The 5 main components you're going to need to get started in flat towing is you're going to need a base plate, you're going to need your tow bars, you're going to need safety cables, you're going to need some type of braking system, and you're also going to need some type of tow bar wiring. The brake system for our Ranger is really nice for people that want to have a permanent setup and not have to have a portable that they're taking in and out of their vehicle. Basically, all you're going to have to do is plug in your air with this one and you're all set to head down the road. The nice thing about this braking system is it's going to be a proportional braking system. So what that's going to do for you is as hard as you push your brake pedal on your RV, it's going to mimic that back in your towed vehicle. So if you're going to have to hit your brakes really hard, you're coming into traffic or something, it will push real hard on the brakes of your truck and it'll help you come to a safe stop. So this setup's going to come with a breakaway switch, and in the unlikely event your vehicle comes unhooked, this is going to pull your brake. And this kit's also going to come with our Demco receiver, and what that's going to do, it's going to allow you to see that your brakes are being activated when you're going down the road from your RV. If you have any questions or comments about this braking system for your Ford Ranger, you can always leave a comment down below in the comment section, or you can leave a question there, or you can get a hold of one of our experts here at eTrailer. They'd be glad to help you out. As far as installation goes, there is a lot of wiring and it can be a little bit tricky to get done, but it's something you can definitely do in your spare time in the driveway or in your garage. But if it's something you don't have time to do yourself, you can always take a look at our dealer locator and get something done for you locally. If it's something you feel like tackling yourself, stick around, watch our video, and we'll help you get it installed. To start our installation, one of the first things we wanted to do is figure out where we were going to get our air into our system. So instead of using the bracket that came in the kit, we decided to go ahead and drill a hole in our bracket that comes on for our plug-in and just went ahead and mounted that on there. So that's going to keep it nice and clean for our neighbor. For our breakaway switch, we went ahead and mounted that right here on an existing nut that was right in the front here. So that made it pretty convenient to get that one figured out. So now we're just going to run our wires up, in behind our bumper, and then up in towards our battery. For our main control unit, we went ahead and used some hook and loop and just attached that right to our fuse box underneath of our hood on our driver's side. That's going to give it a good, stable place for it to live. Another one of our main components you want to get mounted up is going to be the cylinder, and that's going to go on our brake pedal itself. One of the things I like to do before I get this bolted in place is just kind of mock everything up and get an idea of where I'm going to mount these up. You kind of want to have them midway up the pedal, as low as you can get them without it interfering with your foot. And then you want to make sure that you have a straight shot for your cable towards the firewall. As you can see, we have this plate that is screwed down to the firewall, and we used the 3 self-tapping screws that came in our kit to get that in place. And we mounted our cable holder right here in the center, and you want to make sure all of these are nice and tight. Another thing when you're doing this is you want to check on the back side of your firewall and make sure there's nothing back there that's critical that you're going to be screwing into. So keep that in mind before you go drilling or screwing any of your holes into your firewall. And one of the things you want to keep in mind when you're setting this up is you want to keep a little bit of slack in this cable. You don't want this too tight. You want that to have a little bit of play in it. Another thing we did is we ended up running our plastic airline into a grommet we had in our firewall. That allowed us to get everything ran in. So what I did with that is I did realize that I had to run a power wire out from our firewall out to our battery, and then also had to get a ground out. So what I did when I ran this in is I got the hole punched in the grommet, and then I ended up pulling this through from the inside out, and I had quite a bit of this line come out with it. So what I did is I ended up taking the 2 wires that I had to run inside to the inside of our cab, and I taped on to my airline, and I put a little silicone spray on that and pulled everything into the firewall. And after I got that, I went ahead and untaped that on the inside, and now my wires are in, my line is in, and now we can start making our connections. Since our Ranger Raptor doesn't have a vacuum boost system. It's going to have electric brakes. We're going to need to plug the port for that. So what we're going to do is cut about 2 inches or so off of some hose that comes in our kit. Now we're going to use this to plug up that port. Now we have our plug that comes in the kit, and I like to take a little bit of soapy water and just get that on there. It's going to make it slide into the hose a little bit easier. Let's push that all the way down. Now we'll do the same thing with the soapy water. Just want to get a little on that and a little on the hose. Then we're just going to put that onto the vacuum end. And that'll give us a good seal. Now for we have this port on the side. Also in the kit, you're going to have this little cone-shaped rubber plug. Just want to install that into the end. Then we'll install the acorn nut, and we'll go ahead and get that tightened down. Now we have our line that comes out of our firewall, and what I want to do is get this one hooked up to our air out. So what I'm going to do is just make sure I have a good clean end, and I'm going to take a line cutter. Just make sure I have a nice clean cut on that, and all I'm going to do with that is just push that into the port. And push that in all the way. You'll kind of feel it click in place and stop. Give it a little tug. Make sure we have a good connection. For our line we have running in through our firewall, we have our cylinder here, and it's going to be basically the same connection, but I kind of want to see what I need. I want to leave a little bit of slack in this line so it has room to move back and forth. So I'm going to go right about there, and we're going to make another clean cut. Now that we have it cut and it looks good, we'll go ahead and push that into the cylinder. And same thing, we'll feel it stop, give it a little tug, and we have a good connection. Now we have our line for our air in. We went ahead and ran that around the back side of our battery and then ended up going down behind our headlight and came out down here behind our bumper, went through a hole in the bumper, ran over, and then started tying off to a factory wiring harness that is back behind our bumper, ran across, up and over, and then plugged in our line right up here to our fitting, and did the same process we used before. Just push it in there tight, and then make sure it seats up, and then just give it a little tug, and make sure you have a good connection. We ran our orange wire and our black wire up from our breakaway switch, and I did have to add extensions on both of those. So I ended up going from orange to yellow, and that's going to link up to our power. That's going to run over here to our battery. Now our black wire, I did run an extension off of that as well, and that ran right over here to our control unit, and went ahead and used a heat shrink butt connector on that, so we have a good tight waterproof seal on that. Now after we made our connection with our black wire off of our breakaway switch, we're going to have another black wire that comes out of our operating unit, and you can interchange these. They're both basically do the same function. It just hook them up however you want. Now the other one we ended up running over to ground. So we have that grounded there, and our other white wire we have running into our firewall, and that one is going to be a ground that we're going to be using on the inside of our vehicle. So now we have our power wire that comes out from our firewall and is hooked together where it will go to our breakaway switch. Now we need to get our fuse holder put on the end of that. So all we're going to do is strip off the end of our wire, get that twisted up. And then for our fuse holder, I'm just going to cut that back here. Strip off both of those ends. On one of our ends, I like to use the longer end. And what I'm going to do is I'll get my ring terminal on the end of that. May need to thread that in. Those can be a little tight on those for that size. We'll just get that crimped in place. For our other end, we just want to get that twisted together, and we'll put on our heat shrink butt connector. Now I'll come back with my heat source and we'll get this shrunk down. Now we're just going to go to our positive terminal and we're going to use this post that we have right here, and that's going to be a 10 millimeter socket. Just get that broke loose. Now keep in mind we are going to make this connection, but we're not going to put our fuse in until we're completely done making all of our connections for our electric. Once we have that in place, let's go ahead and tighten down our 10 millimeter nut. So we have our white wire coming in, which is going to be our ground. What we're going to do is get one of our butt connectors crimped on. Now our blue wire that comes off of our reed switch will be our ground. Just want to run that in. We'll get that crimped in place. Make sure you have a good connection on those. Now we have our wireless coach link, and what I'm going to do with this is I need to find a good place where I can get this mounted up, and I'm just going to use some hook and loop, and I found a spot up underneath our kick panel here that I'm going to mount this up. So you're going to have hook and loop that will come in your kit, but I'm going to use some that I had just laying around the shop here. I'm just going to get that stuck onto the back. And what I can do is I'm just going to put on my other side, get that pushed on, and pull off the backer. Now I'll just get that in place. Up in our kick panel. Now we're going to get our reed switch hooked up to our transmitter. We're going to have our white wire that comes off of our transmitter. That is going to go to the brown wire on our reed switch. So all I'm going to do now is use some of the butt connectors that come in the kit. These aren't the heat shrink style. We won't be having this out in the elements, so we're just going to use the regulars that come in the kit. We'll just get that in place, and we'll get that crimped. We have a good crimp. Now our other side, we have our power wire leading out from our firewall. Make sure we give that a good twist. Now we can get our butt connector on there. Crimp that in place. Now we'll take our red wire that comes off of our transmitter, and we'll run that to our power wire and get that crimped in place. Now all we have to do is just tuck away all of our wires. At this point, we can move on to the motorhome side, and we're going to get everything set up. We're going to be in this area right in here. We're just going to get our fittings and lines all ran. We're underneath of our RV, and we're in the area of where our air brake setup is, and we did determine that our green line here is going to be our supply line, and we're going to have our metered line that's going to be this smaller one right here. To figure out which line is metered, you can usually take your line off, just push in on this ring and then pull your line out, and then have somebody hit the brakes in there while you still have some air in the lines. And if you have air come out of this end, it means you have your metered line. So that's the one we'll go for metered. We already did check that. And now for our supply up here, keep in mind before you cut into this one, you want to make sure that you pump your brakes and get all the air out of your brakes and pretty much empty out the tank, so that way when you cut this, you're not going to have a bunch of air blowing on you. So our main thing, another thing you want to keep an eye on is you want to get this nice and clean. It's going to make it a lot easier and make a cleaner installation when you put your fitting in here. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take my hose cutter and I'm just going to cut this line and try and get it as much 90 degrees straight as I can. And that looks like that's going to be a pretty good cut. Now in our kit, we're going to have our fitting. All I'm going to do is just push on my fitting until it stops, give it a pull, make sure we have a good connection. You do have to push pretty hard on some of these to get these to go together. So just keep that in mind. Just make sure you get them seated really good, nice and tight. Push on them pretty hard, and that one is good to go. Now for our metered line, this is going to be a 3/8, and also this one up here is going to be a 5/8 outer diameter, and our metered line is going to be 3/8. And basically the same thing we're going to do with that is we're just going to cut this one and try and get a nice clean 90-degree cut on that. Go ahead and cut that. And that one's a little off. I'm going to try and get that a little bit straighter. It's okay to trim a little bit off the end if you need to. Yeah, those look like those are going to be good. Now we'll do the same thing and just push on our fittings. Now if these fight you going on, you can always use a little bit of soapy water, and that will help you get them installed. These are going on pretty good. Both of those are seated, and once you get those seated, you can always turn this wherever you want your direction of your line coming out to go. Now all we have to do is our line in our kit. We just want to make sure, again, that we have a good 90-degree cut and a clean cut, and we're just going to go ahead and push that in like we did our other lines. Get that seated, give it a little pull, make sure we have a good connection. Now we'll run our line back to where our tank is. We ran our line back for our metered line, and we ended up hooking up to our tank we have mounted over here. And we also ran the other line for the supply line back to our tank. Now, we just routed them in the same area that we routed the one we did before, and we just brought it back and tied off. When you're doing that, you want to make sure you're keeping away from any moving parts or any exhaust or anything that gets hot. Just make sure you have them tied up really good so they don't hang down at all or get into anything. And now we can show you how we hooked them up on our tank. Now for our metered line, when we brought it back, we ended up plugging it into this fitting right on top here. That ended up being our metered line. And then for our supply line that came back, we ended up running it up here to this other inlet that runs right into this little gauge and then into our tank. And then for our line that runs all the way to the back, this will be where we plugged in here and ended up routing some more line all the way back to the back to our fitting that will hook up to our towed vehicle. We're at the back of our RV where we mounted up our fitting, and as you can see, we got that out where it makes it really accessible, and it's going to be easy for them to pop it on and off. And one of the things I recommend is keeping your little covers. These are going to keep dirt and debris and water out of your fitting when you're not using it, and I just keep that on there all the time on my vehicle and on the back of my RV. And that was a look at the Demco Air Force One on our 2025 Ford Ranger. I'm Scott with eTrailer, and thanks for watching.